All right, everyone, welcome back again for yet another podcast. This time it's me, my colleague Björn Krantz, and Robin Harrison from IGB. We're having a bit of a discussion around the wider perspective of the industry, where it's going. Listen in.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode in the What's Up Yggdrasil series of podcasts from Yggdrasil. My name is Stuart Darkin. I'm Director of New Media at Square in the Air. Good to see you again. I'm joined once again by Fredrik Elmqvist, the CEO and founder of Yggdrasil, and also Björn Krantz, who is Chief of Global Marketing Operations at Yggdrasil. Hi again, gents. We also have an external contributor today, and that's Robin Harrison, who's an industry journalist who many of you will know. Gentlemen, if I could ask you each just do a short introduction and tell people who you are. Maybe we'll go to Fred and Bjorn first and then finish with our guest Robin, if that's okay.
All right, super. Yes, hi, I'm Fred. I'm the CEO and founder of Yggdrasil Gaming. I came into online gaming in 2006, sports betting first, then into online casino. And I've been there since. And as I said, yes, I am the founder of Yggdrasil.
Hello everyone. Yeah, my name is Björn Krantz. I'm running global market operations here at Yggdrasil. So we are responsible for driving sustainable long-term revenue growth through a well-defined customer and market operations strategy. Our unit have a 360 view on the revenue ecosystem and how we can impact that revenue ecosystem in a positive and sustainable way.
And I am Robin Harrison, as Stuart said, and I'm the B2B editor at Clarion Gaming. So I look after titles such as IGB and IGB North America. Been in the sector for over a decade now, working for a number of publications, and delighted to be here today.
Thanks all. Now, this is a rather broad topic, looking at industry dynamics. And Fred, you'll be pleased to know I'm coming to you first.
Wow.
It's been quite a year for online casino and, of course, beyond. As we look ahead, as the world emerges from the shadow of the pandemic, I wonder what you think the key challenges are as we move forward.
I mean, it's a super broad topics, and there's so much dynamics in play. If you're looking from a global perspective, I mean, we are a casino developer from beginning. We're taking a more of a publishing role, working more with enabling technology, enabling current external studios and so forth, bringing relevance to our market. But taking a few steps back and looking from a global perspective, of course, we see some turbulences in Asia at the moment. We see some regulatory impacts in Europe that can swing in basically either way. We see. We're all for the regulations, but these player restrictions, too heavy of those, can have a negative impact on the actual legitimate market, and it can create some really, really darker things coming from it. We're talking about counterfeit B2C, counterfeit B2B, even counterfeit streams or hijacked streams. So I see that as a very not so pleasant risk, and he's looking at the close European market. And on the other side, we have a Klondike, with SPACs and US and sports betting. I'm sure Robin here can tell us more about that if we get into that topic. So I see, a completely super dynamic landscape at the moment.
It's interesting how you identified the threat of over-regulation as creating more problems than it does solutions. Robin, from a media perspective, you'll have a slightly different take on things and on the challenges facing the sector. How do you see it?
Well, I'd agree with Fred in that you're seeing a lot of changes in Europe. I mean, it's very much, it feels like there's a kind of old world, new world divide opening up, whereas Europe was once very, I suppose, welcoming to iGaming. You're seeing a real kind of shift in how regulators approach it, not just in new markets as they open, like Germany, which is finally opening, or even the Netherlands. But you're seeing this in, the UK, you're seeing this in Spain, Italy. To an extent, it's even coming into France. And of course, Sweden is a very good example of a particularly kind of a fluid regulatory situation that's had a real kind of knock-on effect in the industry. But then if you go across the pond, in the US, where, for example, in 2015, I think people would have, maybe a few years before that, maybe say 2013 when New Jersey opened for online casino, very few people would have, believed that there could have been the kind of wave of regulation that we've seen for sports betting. It's live in more than 20 states now. That would have been unthinkable kind of like 6-7 years ago. And then you're also seeing a lot more kind of industry legitimacy in that side of the pond. It's like you're seeing, as Fred mentioned, you're seeing a lot of listings either through, the kind of traditional IPO route or through the special purpose acquisition companies. And then, sports betting and to a lesser extent gaming is kind of cutting through to the kind of, the traditional media. A lot of these companies are kind of either, taking the advertising dollars or, like Fox Sports trying to get involved in a more meaningful thing that you're also seeing Sinclair broadcasting with Bally's, or even, Fubo TV, which isn't that well known over here, but it's essentially a streaming service that's moved into sports betting through a few bits of M&A. So it's really this kind of a shift across the two continents. Things have gone in opposite directions, and so that's ultimately the core challenge. The markets that were traditionally the sure things are now becoming more difficult, whereas the new markets that were once almost a bit pie in the sky are now becoming this really potentially lucrative thing. Sorry, this is quite a long-winded answer, but just to kind of like sum that up, the biting point that we're in now that I think is important to note is while European revenue and profit is being eaten into by tighter regulation, whether that's stake limits, I think we'll discuss later. And while the US is opening up, it's still very much in the startup phase. So, it's costing more than it's bringing back in. So that's kind of the challenge at the moment. You've got this in the middle of this shift. You've got the lessening returns on one side and the not yet there returns on the other.
Plus, another thing that if I might cut in, there's another thing that we maybe haven't touched upon is crypto. It's the crypto part kind of counterbalancing this whole regulation, the infringement. And that's why I actually, and I'm not saying crypto is a bad element in here. I'm not saying that. It's an enabler. I could put it in a context. I'm not saying that, but it's kind of facilitating a bit that kind of a darker, unregulated business as well. And we see it growing. We see it growing a lot. And as well, the currency itself is growing. So people with crypto money need to take them somewhere. And a bit of spillover that probably happened on the casino side. So I just think that the message I think should be to the regulators: taxes are good. Everyone wants to be in the taxed environment, but if they start doing too much player restrictions, let's say creating that toxic environment for the player might work somewhere else where it must not be so healthy. And the whole counterfeit part, we see our games showing up in a context where they're not supposed to be, because it's not our games. It's just a counterfeit. Previously innovation's been driving everything. So doing cheap copies of something, that's not going to be the what's going to drive the market in the legit side anymore. But sadly, the bad over-regulated parts has kind of opened the door for the counterfeit market, which is really, really bad, because it's really hard to take the market back once it's been going down that route. I think that if you're looking at talking to streamers, that talk to players, and see where the new breed, the new the new brands that pop up, what are driving them, and how are they bringing, what is their go-to-market strategy, and I think you see that it's coming now, and so I find it very interesting to see how that's going to hit in the mix of everything, in Europe. So but the only thing you can say, it's never a dull moment in this industry. There's always something happen. There's always some curveballs coming that you got to be ready for. And I find that very, very interesting and challenging. I think that the lobbying today, and I think that is one of the issues why the regulations in these local markets are going in different directions and maybe not being best for the industry. Is that when I talk to some of the operators, ask them what they're doing this, and it's more like they're driving an agenda for the local market, which basically means that if we get this regulation into place, it will be worse for their competitor than for them. Which means that if you have that thing going on, everyone's going to try using regulations at a competitive advantage on their side. The only problem is that it has an impact on the entire local market where they're in. And so I think that there's the B2C guys should more stand hand in hand and dictate something together that would work, not dictate, but to try and lobby for that something to work for the entire market, and the things about the industry as a whole, and not just saying getting a competitive advantage over someone else because they know it's going to be worse for them than for us. And I see that, and it's not really helping the industry. It might help them for the quarter or for the 3 quarters, but it's not going to be good for the industry in the long run. I think that all these player restrictions just gonna be, the channelization is just gonna decrease, and that's just bad for the legitimate industry. And I'm just afraid that whatever is going to scoop up this part on the other side, it's going to be much, much darker. It's going to get darker and darker. We're talking about counterfeit B2C, counterfeit B2B streams, etc. It's just not good. Huh? So I really think that they would kind of get to the sense about just reading the data. I really hope so.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think this collaboration between the industry and regulators is key, and that also the regulator has an appetite, to get a lot of insight. What is the possible effects here, and what do we want to achieve, and then streamline and harmonize the frameworks so it's optimized with obviously responsible gaming top of mind. I mean, Robin, you mentioned Germany here with the €1 max bet, and we hear in the market that it could sort of drive the RTP down, and that is not good either, because if you have a low stake level and then you are taxed on turnover, which I think could happen and most likely will happen in Germany, then there is no margin. In order to get the margin, you are then lowering the sort of the RTP in order to get a little bit more out of it. But that is not helping the players, and when it's not helping the player side of things, that is when you start to look elsewhere, and when you look elsewhere, then you get the lower channelization into the regulated market, and then you are failing at the end. So I think we are talking about the balance here, and the balance is because there is this collaboration and a proactive dialogue between the industry and the regulator. That needs to happen all the time, not only inside the country, but also more wider, maybe European wide.
Can I step in with one thing? Just one thing there, because I want to hear Robin's as well view on this as well. I mean, what I see here a little bit from specifically drilled down from the Swedish market. This is home market in home place, home country in many ways. then you hear like that the public opinion still has an opinion around gaming, and I think they say a lot of it is because there's still a lot of TV commercial and in the broader media. There's still a lot of campaigning and activities from the B2C brands. And so they're saying like we start a regulation, in the public opinion it was like provide regulations so we don't need to get that much, in our face TV commercials or radios on a regular basis. But the restrictions was on the player, not on the marketing. So in the public opinion, they feel like the regulation hasn't helped anything. So I'm just wondering if that happening in all the other places as well. Because then it would be so easy to lower the pressure by, have advertising going on, after 10 o'clock or when kids gone to bed and so forth. And I think that will probably solve the P&L for some of the B2Cs as well, because they won't have to spend so much money on marketing. I don't know.
I'd like to come now to the public opinion of gaming. These things we've talked about, state limits and so on, are very visible measures, whether they be advertising bans or limits on how much you can spend and so on. Do you feel there's a disconnect between what regulators think is good for the image of the industry, or good for the industry as a whole, and what's actually good for the sector? So, it's been said that some of these measures that are meant to protect the industry and its players actually can do more harm than good. And I wonder what the view on that is.
I mean, from my perspective, I believe that going from a normal day-to-day type of business, and then you have a pandemic where you have suddenly an accelerated increase of liquidity into online. I think there is no real best practice in that delta. It goes too fast. And when it goes too fast, it seems, that decisions can be made very quickly to what they feel is appropriate and not necessarily what is most appropriate in order to optimize the balance, as said, between, where sort of the license frameworks are, what do we want to achieve, versus what happens when we have an influx of traffic online. And I think that this best practice, at least what I think, needs to come down to a better collaboration. Again, what we've talked about, a better and tighter collaboration in between the industry and the regulator. Because I don't think that necessarily the regulator knows really what the impact is when you have that delta of accelerated traffic, and suddenly you just need to make a quick decision what you feel is right for not having a negative impact that is more theoretic than based on facts. And facts normally comes from where the business is happening, and that is a collective knowledge database from the industry that we can share, and we're happy to share with the regulator. And the regulator then obviously need to be willing to discuss and understand that, and then take a joint decision. Because again, it's an investment that we and operators are doing in these type of markets, and these investments they don't come for free. I mean, there is options, but we have selected the regulatory ways of working, and that is a route that we want to go. So there must be a balance of discussions and also a shared interest of making decisions that we feel is sort of supporting the cause. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think was quite interesting that the Gambling Commission in GB did was the industry working groups. So, it was bringing together a mixture of operators and suppliers and taking issues such as online marketing, kind of responsible game design, and then saying, work it out. You know, it was, and to an extent, I think it worked. There were some bits where the Commission stepped in, but I think that was a good example of, you know, the regulator kind of going to the industry and saying, you guys are doing this day to day. We want to know how you can do it better, and involving them. I mean, obviously there's, at the moment, there's over here, there's a pretty negative public perception of the industry. So that was, I think, the line used by one of the kind of anti-industry lobby groups was it was letting the industry mark its own homework. But I mean, the flip side is, if you've got someone who doesn't know about the industry, who doesn't understand the industry, then saying this is how the industry should work, I mean, that's just, you know, a cause for disaster. You know, it's like if you're, you know, if you go to a restaurant, you wouldn't go in and expect to be able to cook your own food and then pay for it, you know?
Yeah, agree again. I mean, it's that's the problem when it's a political agenda driving this, and that is a problem. So player protection is great. Local taxed markets are great, but again, I'm coming back to it. By doing these player restrictions, you're not going to swing the public opinion either, because the public opinion is going to be swung if they don't have to see I'm blunt here. It's my personal opinion. It's my personal theories. But I'm just saying, I don't think the public opinion is going to be swung unless they decrease the marketing impact. They decrease the marketing activities in the broader medias. For players who want to play, they can go online. They can find what they want to find there anyway. Okay, but I think that it's political agenda, and what they're implementing is not solving it either for the public opinion or for the players, because the player protection, again, they're just going to find another route out to find the games they want to play. If it says 92 here, it says 96 there, they're going to go there. If they get 200% deposit bonus there and they get nothing there, they're going to go there. And there will be other industry players, gray, black, whatever, they're going to be facilitating this. And it's just going to be even more black in the end. And it's going to be tough to get that market share back. So again, B2B, B2C, affiliates, and all need to sit crosswise and discuss this with the regulators, not drive single bickering opinions, if you understand me. That ain't gonna work. We're not gonna be able to educate them by one opinion or one direction. It's not gonna be educating anyone. So this is just how it is, and I think it's going to be continuing for some time and go in this direction. At some point, it's going to be exposed when they say, did we know that this decision made by that politician has actually helped finance a bombing? Let's say, I'm just playing out loud here, but it's not impossible. And I wish just that some of the journalists would look at that stuff instead of trying to come and find out how well certain of these people that's been working hard for 10, 15 years, how much money they made. Because it's completely different things. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. Sorry, Robin.
No, I was just going to say on that. I mean, obviously I won't mention the names, but every year...
Come on, do it. No one's going to listen to this.
It's like just every year there's a certain company, it releases its results and it becomes like this feeding frenzy.
Privately owned?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So basically, it's a UK taxpayer that gives significant amounts to charity, that employs thousands of people, and it's disheartening, because essentially, on the most basic level, this kind of smear, I suppose, that the gambling industry wants to make people addicted is just, it's not true,
What
So-
if she did not tax that money? Not she actually. I'm guessing. I think I know it's a she. What if she would not have taxed that money and channeled that money somewhere else? That would be bad news. But the fact that the person's taxing the money there, I mean, which means the money going back to the people. So I really don't get it. I really don't get
Yeah.
it.
You
But
know,
this is,
it's-
yeah.
It's a success story. It's a brilliant British success story. It's something, and then this, and it's depressing. It's sickening to see it.
Yeah. I quit.
Come to you, if I may, and ask you about industry consolidation in the B2B sector. I'm not directly referring, well, I am directly referring to Evolution and NetEnt and Red Tiger and Big Time Gaming. I wouldn't expect you to comment on that, but that kind of thing is going to keep happening. And I wonder, what does that mean for Yggdrasil, that kind of consolidation?
Well, I will tell you this. Consolidation has previously happened. It's not a new phenomenon here, right? It's happened before. It just goes a bit in phases, depending on where the industry are and how the industry players are at the moment. But when I take two steps back and I look at the phenomena around consolidation and new influx, because I see not only, I don't want to look at only one area, I want to look at the influx as well. And as we mentioned in previous podcasts, I think we were one of the ones who made sure that there's a tidal wave of new studios coming in, a bit realizing we can take down the big 3 or 4 guys that was there. And now you see a different scenario where we're there. You can come in on our platform as a studio and a B2B guy, because we're now working with slots developers. We have 25 something studios working with curating that. We're doing 6-7 games per week now, right? So we are kind of enabling a new tidal wave of B2B coming in. So whatever consolidation is going on here is actually not going to have that big of an impact, the way I see it, because the creative force of the talent out there, it's not going to be one to be consolidated. You can consolidate the business, but you cannot consolidate the people to that extent. The creative talent will want to create something again. Or create something that, for themselves or in a different context. And I think you've seen that before. You could say spin-offs in people. You saw people working for NetEnt that came on Quickspin and whatnot, and even YGG and so forth. So it's just a continuous cycle here. So consolidation is just one part energy going one direction. And enabling creative talent to do something new. It's just another end of this force. Consolidation, it could be a good thing. It could bring value for shareholders. Seek for synergies, maybe be beneficial for you to enter in a certain market. They have a product, they have a technology. That consolidation is good. I think defensive consolidation is just trying to share costs solely. I'm not a big fan of that, to be honest. I'm much more pro in enabling new businesses. I'm more pro in doing that. So I don't think this consolidation we see now is just going to be putting a bigger lid on everything. I don't see that at all.
I think it's really interesting what you say about the creative burden, about innovative minds leaving maybe an acquired business and then re-entering the ecosystem as a startup. Does that mean we should be looking to those new entrants for our most innovative products?
I think that we might expand the master's program, or let's call it the master's partner collaboration program. We might expand that to different verticals. This discussion has been going for some time, and there might be some technical developments going in that direction already, with the same approach as we've had previously on streamlining for everyone and bring a lot of value and so forth. And we want to be that force of nature or dynamics to enable that thing to come through us. So again, I think that the consolidation part is happening. It's just going to be there, and it can be for defensive, for offensive purposes. But I always think there's going to be a lot of more things coming in, driven by innovation. And what I always say is that it's player experience. you know what? Just you know, broadening the discussion here again, maybe a sidetrack. But if you look at the whole developments and it's a wide conversation, so I feel free to do that. You look at the way daily fantasy sports has been exploding in the United States. Okay, in the vacuum of not having real sports betting either. But if you look at the product per se, it is a pretty complex product. It requires a lot of engagement and not maybe the most casual product. And then you have now piggybacking with sports betting on that. But surely with that interest in sports today, there must be some innovation coming. And I want to, let's see if we can widening our offering and go into something like that as well, because I think there's a lot of room for innovation there in sports betting. And I'm not saying it's going to be just, you know, whipping up a sports book, because I think that's going to be really tough. But something else there. There's definitely something there.
Robin, I'm interested in your media view really on what Fred was talking about there, on that shift of creativity around the sector.
I mean, just the sheer volume of slot games that are coming out every month. You know, we've actually launched a new product called the Slot Showcase, just to try and keep up with the demand from, you know, the audience, A, to know about the new games, and B, for developers to showcase them. We also do some work with a company called iGaming Monitor, just tracking, you know, the kind of the movements in the market. And it is just, there is so much going on that you kind of, in the way that with the operators, you know, on the B2C side, when they consolidate, they bring together large groups of players. When the B2B companies consolidate, there's always room for more. You know, there's always, you know, I think Fred's totally right. There's always those creative forces, and they move around. They have different ideas. They come up with different concepts, you know, and it does feel like, even in a time of kind of a slight, you know, kind of like stricter regulation, there's room for that. I mean, like over the past few years, you've seen the rise of kind of like blockbuster features, you know, not even the games, the features that you get within them. And so I think that just kind of speaks to exactly what Fred's saying. You know, it doesn't even need to be a new kind of like a new Starburst or something. You know, it doesn't need to be that kind of blockbuster title. It can also be a new element being added in, much in the same way you see with sports betting, like with cash out or with odds boosts. You know, these, I think the thing is, a lot of the time innovation is talked about in this very kind of all-encompassing manner, where it can be little incremental changes that just make things better. And I think that's how the industry grows. You know, it's not the massive disruptive force that causes everything to change, because, you know, let's face it, change costs money. You know, these kind of disruptive things require a lot of work. It's the little incremental things that are rolled out, adopted, tweaked, evolved. That's where the interest is. And so in terms of consolidation, I mean, you know, I don't think it's fair to say that the largest companies can't innovate. You know, I don't think that's true. But I do think that it's the smaller guys. You know, it's the guys who've kind of had a crazy idea and gone off to kind of make that work and see how it actually goes. That sort of thing, you know, I think is always going to be there. I mean, as with any industry, with tech, you know, it's like, you know, I mean, you know, like year 2000, you know, we're all putting our top 8 friends on MySpace, you know, and then, you know, kind of like, you know, 5-10 years on, we had Facebook, and now we've got Twitter and whatever the other ones are that I'm now too old to keep up with. You know what I mean? It's like things change and things evolve. You know, it's the nature of the world.
Yeah, and to get disruptive with enablers today, we talked to streamers earlier today as well, and with the enabler today, we enabling developers to come to us and get their games and everything across, and the streamers, they're enabling small new brands to come to market quickly which they could not have done in the same way before. Show them the experience, what's happening, and they're willing to pay for it. Not so much because taking a revenue share on players. So it's a very, very dynamic market. We're producing digital content. We're marketing them digitally. They're being consumed digitally. So it goes super fast, which is a perfect environment for talented people. Creative, talented people. It's a perfect space because it goes so quickly. You can go quickly to a point where you might say, hey, we can exit. And while you have, as you mentioned, you have the listed, let's say the big guys who are looking at the cash flow, they're looking at potentially 50 potential in projects to invest in, what to choose from. And of course, there's going to be someone else going to pick up that, going to be closer to the market, understanding the player better, create something innovative, as you said, on a micro perspective, incremental perspective, or maybe even bolder and go to something bigger. You know, it cost them 3 years and they have the house in the mortgage and whatnot, but still they made it and then they make their exit. And that is just going so quick now, and they're going to go quicker and quicker since we have the enablers so close at hand. So the consolidation will have to speed up if they're going to catch up with all the new thing that's coming on a regular basis, which is good stuff coming.
I'd like to pick up on the sheer volume of content and slots that's being produced right now. In terms of being a game producer, with all that noise, how does Yggdrasil be heard? How does it stay relevant and remain visible? There are a lot of companies that didn't even exist when Yggdrasil was being formed that now are producing great products and who rightly deserve the headlines they're getting. How do you rise above the noise that you head above the parapet? That's one for Bjorn or Fred, I guess.
Bjorn, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I can start. Yeah, I mean, obviously we need to address the players' real needs all the time, and we need to be inquisitive and follow the market trends and the dynamics of the complete player journey. And in that player journey, which comes down to not only access to BI and how you use BI and convert BI into the development and the innovative process, but also the collaboration with our customers and partners, and both on the master side and on the commercial operator side, and of course the user groups. When we develop that, so it's all about getting insight and turning that insight to like a gameplay map. And if you do that, I believe at least you can sort of improve your chances of doing good stuff. And but it doesn't. It's not enough that a few, I would say that a few people in the company have the knowledge and interest. I mean, we need the whole entire company to be interested in the sector where we are, where we are playing, and we need to be keen on getting and feeding back insight in order for us always to stay ahead of the roadmap, sort of the roadmap build and the development part. So I think we are pushed on all angles here. I mean, first of all, we have our own studio productions with, of course, dreaming about the hits and aiming for the stars and all the time. And there's a lot of different type of benchmarks that is going into to that. And then of course, as we talked about, we are a big company today with all the different type of programs still in the core business of what we're doing, but the programs are also pushing us to be better and more innovative in all areas, because they also have demands. So I believe that there is a lot of different forces that sort of push us ahead of the curve, and we are all passionate to be ahead of that curve as well. And the output then, or the output is then a roadmap that can make a difference, together with our operators and the markets that we serve.
So that's a good point, Fred. As Bjorn says, is the competition actually making you stronger?
I would say that as a strategy that we laid out is going to make us stronger. But again, I think that we're talking about being in a position. I think as we talked in the previous stream, we were not first in with streamers and influence. We didn't really pick that up early. We picked it up. We're now aligning some of the roadmap and with the community, not necessarily streamer, but the streamer community or the influencer in general, not to focus completely on streamers, because this is just one part there. That's going to increase relevancy for our own roadmap. Hit the sweet spots in the target markets. But then also, as we're talking now, that there's the content that's coming out and the talented people is coming out like the working with seriously good companies previously and done some really good things, and they feel like they want to stand on their own or in smaller groups, and let's enable them. Let's sell them the shovels. So we have our own gold mine here that we're exploring and gold doing, but we're using our experience, our tools and everything, and we're sharing that with them on a revenue share basis. So I think that how you stay ahead of the curve is by enabling the talent, because you can't stop now. The talent is coming, and the talent want their part of the cake, and there's no way that 4 or 5 big companies going to stop that. We saw that we were running we're kind of punching a hole in the guys before. There came 4 or 5 big companies that came up. And I will tell you one thing there. You mentioned Relax and No Limit City, which is very, very interesting, because they were created before us. They were doing peripheral products. They were creating peripheral products. They were really good. I really respect the people they have there, and I really respect what they've done. But they did not venture into that, what they're doing now, to focus on slots and talent and creativity. They didn't do it before, because they thought it wasn't possible. I even talked to some of the owners. They said, we didn't think it was possible to see what you did. We got inspired for what you did. What we did then back in 2013 and 14. So I don't have any shares with these guys. They should give it to me anyway. But so I'm saying talent will come. It could be lingering around or being sleeping a little bit, but it can materialize. You saw how it was from Pragmatic as well, when they came into with new shareholders taking over the company, did some changes, skyrocketed. Relax now, they did some changes, skyrocketed. No Limit City, a new type of breed of games coming out, skyrocketing. So what we want to be doing as well is, except for our own skyrocketing, is help others to skyrocket. Collaborate.
Gentlemen, thank you. We're not out of time yet. The time we have got, we've used well. I have some rather broad questions about the industry over the coming years, the kind of thing that you love about what's going to happen over the next 5 years or so. I'm not going to ask you to do specifically that, but I would like you to round up, please, in turn, and maybe look ahead to the next year or 2 or 5, or whatever's relevant for what you think is the biggest challenge facing the sector. Robin, if it's okay, we'll come to you first, and then, I don't know, Bjorn or Fred, one of you guys should have the last word, I suppose.
It's difficult to say, really, because obviously, as I've said before, the addressable market is growing. And I mean, I suppose what I'd hope would happen is that we finally work out that balance between the kind of firm control and a viable business. Because I mean, ultimately, I think the industry is changing. It's becoming more socially responsible. I mean, it has to. It's doing it at an accelerated rate. And at this point in time, the public perception hasn't changed enough. People perhaps aren't at the point they were, kind of 6-7 years ago, when there was a broad acceptance. And I think if we get back to that point, that's ultimately very beneficial for the industry, because then it's more sustainable, both in terms of, responsible gambling and the broader kind of social and environmental factors. I think that's very important. And so, I mean, I think that's kind of a key thing over the next 5 years. And we'll also have the majority of the US live, hopefully, with sports betting and iGaming by that point. So yeah, that's that's a bit of a kind of sitting in the fence answer, if I'm honest. But I mean, I think they're the two things that are really going to shift things around. I mean, you're also going to see, other new regions opening up. I think, by 2025, I would imagine that more of Latin America is going to be up and running. Africa is a very interesting market, and you're going to see that develop. A region like Asia, it's difficult to say. It's similar to any kind of region. It's similar to kind of like handbrake turns and kind of like perception and regulatory scrutiny. So I wouldn't stick my neck out in Asia, but I'd say kind of there's going to be significant growth. Because I think ultimately what this all comes down to, hopefully, is that people will see that it's better to have a regulated thing rather than some kind of ephemeral offshore kind of thing to try and chase down.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate I put you on the spot there a little bit, but I'm grateful that you brought us neatly back to where we began talking about markets. Fred or Bjorn, I wonder if either of you wants to come in there.
Yeah, Bjorn, you want to take that? I feel I think I've exhausted everything I wanted to say
exhausted.
already.
I can.
So I think I was going to say the same thing again.
I take it.
I think you'll have a lot of still things to come out. I see that. So now is the time, man. Now is the time.
Thank you for the trust and confidence you have in me, Fred. As always. Yeah, no, I'm thinking about a couple of things here. One is for sure more of the standardization on the tech and the regulatory side. We talked about the industry specifically, from a regulatory perspective, being fragmented. And what I see in front of me in the next coming years is more of a standardization, more of a harmonization, both on the regulatory framework side, but also on the tech side, that how we can enable our output in a more streamlined way. Considering that if we look at our particular industry, the market is still flooded by new releases every month. So I feel that going forward, we need to bring innovation in our industry forward. We need to take the next step on the innovation ladder. What does that mean? I mean, obviously, we're talking about addressing again the another types of potential segment for entertainment, and how will that work? How could that look like? And how do we serve that particular segment? I think that is going to be like super interesting. I'm also thinking about the 360 view, that in hindsight of a higher type of competition out there in the market, and to create that competitive edge, and also to keep control on your own destiny. I believe that we will see more of stakeholders taking this 360 view. Fred, you talked about the streamers. We have also affiliation. We have obviously, our customer segments and markets. But if we don't have the 360 view, if we don't understand the ecosystem in where we are sitting and living and breathing, we will not drive our business strategy agenda forward. So I think that is one part that we will see be more handled. And also what we have talked about throughout this particular podcast is also the globalization. And I believe also that US will have a big say in how this particular industry will be shaped in the next coming 3 to 5 years. The US is today already setting some of the evaluation parameters in the industry, and they see the industry more as amusement, than gambling. So US, I think, will also be an important driver for where this industry is going.
Bjorn, thank you. Also to Fred and Robin. I didn't get to talk too much in the last hour or so, which means we did something right. I look forward to catching up again and seeing how much you got right. No, I said you and not me. Thanks all. Have a great day. Take care.
All right. Thank you very much. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for participating.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Ciao.